going on, Christopher? It's time to review Boyhood.
Yep, the landmark movie, a movie which people have taken to quite profoundly, quite spiritedly. We've had text messages, like you said in the previous link, of people who see this as being a milestone movie, a very, very important movie in the development of cinema. This, if for people that don't know, this is about the life of a young man called Mason, and it follows his life from age 6 to age 18. It's been filmed over 12 years.
Actually filmed over 12 years?
Actually filmed over 12 years. You see him and the rest of the cast grow and age before your very eyes.
Oh my God.
Filmed over the course of 39 days over those 12 years, trying to do a I think a week. They filmed each bit in a week. The last movie that I saw Richard Linklater's, who is the director, was Bernie. Bernie is a black comedy. It starred Jack Black. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. If you're at all a fan of Richard Linklater's work, then, and you haven't seen Bernie, by all means see it. It's probably the best movie that Jack Black has ever done by a country mile. This movie is the big awards contender. It is the one which some people are very, very happy that it's been nominated for. I'll be honest, up to seeing this movie, I'd heard very, very mixed things about it. On the one hand, as we have already had messages saying that it is a landmark movie, it is going to be one of those movies that people are going to talk about for years to come. And for other people, they thought it was inadequate.
Why is that?
Well, I'm going to get on to that. I have to say, sadly, I have to be the dissenting voice in this, as I'm someone who, sadly, and once again, other opinions are available. You may love it, you may think it is great and inspiring. I, on the other hand, didn't. The project itself is very ambitious, very brave. There is no getting away from that, because it is. It is filming something over the course of 12 years.
Absolutely.
Anything could have happened over the course of those 12 years. But when we put that to a side, and we actually physically look at the movie itself, I have problems with it.
Oh dear.
It's pure and simple problems. For a start, this is a movie, and this is probably one of the positives of the movie. It isn't terribly narrative focused. It isn't, say, almost like a Wonder Years-esque thing where, oh, that was the summer where I went to summer camp, doodly 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 doodly, and we have a bit where he learns to swim or something like that. We avoid the more cliched moments. We avoid the bits that could be in some very subpar soap opera. Though there are moments where we do have that. There is a moment in the early half of the movie where we have the alcoholic stepdad who is performing the alcoholism in a fairly laughable way, and it is uncomfortable, not necessarily because of the subject matter, but because it feels very cheap.
Really?
Like a very cheap attempt at drama. It's like shooting a dog on a cinema screen. People are going to get emotive to it, people are going to be upset by it, but at the end of the day, for me, that bit doesn't really have anything to it, because then you're thinking, well, this is the focus of the movie. There's going to be more big moments like this, but there isn't.
Does it just kind of think, I mean, I imagine one of the problems with, 12 years is that so much happens to a person in 12 years. I mean, 12 years ago, I was like 9 or whatever, and it's like so much must happen, and to squeeze that into 2 hours, it must just be the most dramatic moments, surely.
No.
Theoretically, that's what it should be.
Theoretically, but then at the same time, then it would be like a soap opera. Then it would be like the Wonder Years. It would be the moment where he's at the prom, or he's at a birthday party, or he's dealing with bullies, which you don't get. There are moments where it feels just like, hey, remember 2002?
Yeah.
Game Boy Advance SP, Dragon Ball Z, the Iraq War. Remember all these things?
Wow.
Remember when Barack Obama wasn't president? It feels like the greatest hits. There's one scene which, had I seen it in the cinema, I probably would have walked out at that moment.
Oh.
It was because it just felt like no, really. It was a moment where Mason and his stepfamily go off to the midnight release of a Harry Potter book, and then the scene ends.
Oh dear.
And I just think to myself, no.
Yeah.
Right, okay, it's fair enough. This is a movie without a narrative. It hasn't got a story to it. So we need stuff. Otherwise, these moments, these scenes to be significant. And more importantly, if we're not going to have significant moments, if we're not going to have, they're at the lake and one of them nearly drowns or something, then we need to have interesting characters, which we don't. Like we said, the idea of it being a 12 years thing is very ambitious. For the simple fact that it's a child actor growing up to become a man. Over that period of time, he could become a terrible actor.
Absolutely.
In this movie, he goes from being vaguely average to vaguely average, if I'm being very blunt.
Well, can I just say, I've just been looking for our texts once again, and on the subject of Boyhood, Paul says probably one of the most unusual coming of age films that you'll ever hope to see.
Yeah, it is definitely against the grain when it comes to coming of age thing. When we think coming of age movies, we think of stuff like Stand By Me. It is very, this is the summer where I learned to become a man. We don't get that. It is. I've heard the best analogy that I can come to for this movie. It's like being at somebody's house and watching their old home movies.
Right.
You're not really getting much of an emotional connection to it, but you're seeing someone grow up before your very eyes, which itself is a very brave thing, but there is nothing significant to it. There is no melodramatic bits quite as we do with the alcoholic dad. There is no moment where we can turn around and say, this character has grown or developed. He stays more or less the same, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. Just that as he grows up, he kind of just becomes a bit of a waste of time, a bit of a pseudo philosophist. One of the last lines of this movie is him and possibly his future girlfriend, and they're in a canyon and they've just taken drugs, and one of them says, you know how people think that, seize the moment? Well, I don't believe that. I think like the moment seizes us.
Right.
And yes, you get people, young teenagers saying nonsense, philosophical thing, trying to be clever. But when you get to that moment, you kind of think to yourself, well, those other philosophical moments that we thought were trying to be just silly teen stuff actually supposed to mean something? Because if they do, then they mean very little. I'm sorry to say that I really didn't like this movie.
Oh, what?
It is 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's nearly 3 hours long.
Oh, that is a long movie.
And having to sit through, ultimately, a movie which the acting is very wooden, the dialogue is flat. And
Hold on, can I just ask, are they playing themselves?
No, they're playing characters.
So basically, I mean, the dynamics of that must be very strange anyway, because to be like, was he 6, did you say?
Yeah, he's
for over
6 when
12
it
years.
started.
So to be a 6-year-old and to agree to this 12-year-long project, and then to have at random intervals this film company, come over and say, right, okay, remember when you were 6, you signed this contract, right, let's film another scene now with people that you'll only see when we're filming this scene. Must be bizarre, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's bizarre. That's not maybe the issue that I have with it, because the family dynamic is believable. It's just that it is like watching someone's home movies. I feel no emotional connection to anyone in this movie whatsoever. Ethan Hawke, I think, is probably the best thing about this movie as the divorced dad. I could have done with him being more in the movie and it being more about him being the divorced father who only sees his son once in a while, seeing his son grow up at a distance without his involvement in it. That in itself is interesting. I think that the first half of the movie is definitely the better half of the movie, because that is when you're seeing a child and a child's eye view of the world. You're seeing the darker moments, you're seeing the lighter moments, you're seeing all these bits through his eyes. When we get to the midway point, he starts becoming a teenager, then it starts to come a little bit to certain points lost, certain bits one-dimensional, and some bits very pompous. I'm sad to say I didn't like this movie. Of course, there are people, as we had in the correspondence, who have really taken this movie, who see it as being a landmark. I'm not saying that it's a bad movie. I'm not saying it's a horrible movie. I'm not saying it's a movie that you should out and out avoid like the plague.
Yeah.
But for me, there's very little in it that I can actually say, this is a good movie. The project is brave, it is ambitious, but ultimately it doesn't amount to much for me, which I'm sad to say. I would have liked to have seen this, because when I first heard about it, it sounded fascinating.
It's one of those unique projects that really is kind of unique in a way.
It is, because let's face it, otherwise it'd be a movie set over 12 years. The adult actors are going to say the same, but they're going to get a different kid each time.
Yeah.
It's the same guy, it's the same person. You see everyone grow up over the space of 12 years. That itself is fascinating, that itself is good, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really amount to much for me. There is no snap to it, there is no pop to it. It is seeing someone vaguely walk his way through life in a way that you have no connection with because of bad acting and bad writing. And at the end of the day, I think it's kind of done a little bit, it's been received a lot better as a project, and because of some areas of nostalgia, they're necessarily out of it being a good movie. Which is a shame, because I would have liked to have watched this movie, to have really been taken by it. Like I say, I saw his previous movie, Bernie, with Jack Black, and I thought that was fantastic. That's probably one of my favourite movies I've ever seen. But to go from that to this, where it is bits,
Yeah.
It's the Harry Potter release bit. It's him watching Dragon Ball. It's him playing with his DS. It's him trying beer for the first time. It doesn't really amount to much, which is sad.
Yeah, that's a shame. Right, listen, still to come on your review, you're going to be talking about Nightcrawler, and you're also going to be talking about A Most Violent Year.
Yes.
That's coming up really soon. Right now, this is Katy Perry and Raw on 103.2 Preston FM.